through. All right, thank you very much. Going to assume
Excellent.
that everything's working now. Hey, and just to prove that it's live, all right? Yeah, production and everything finally coming through. Hopefully, fingers crossed. It's okay. Ben's the most important person here anyway. Let's start again, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for bearing with us. Ben Marriott, how are you?
Thank you very much, Flynn. I am doing very well. Doing much better now that I have my voice back. Doing well, staying safe from home under, self-isolation, social distancing. So, taking care. How are you?
Very well, thank you. At home, like all of you. I hope everyone's staying safe. Thank you all jumping into chat. Thanks for confirming that the audio is working. That's great. The only hiccup that'll happen, no worries. So we've actually been planning this for quite some time. We were planning on doing this together in a studio with our full production team and kind of get to hang out over a couple of days, but things are a little bit different in the world right now. But thankfully, through the amazing technology that we have, we can bring this to everybody and bring all this amazing content. So I'm super excited. Ben, what do you have in store for us today?
Thank you very much, Flynn. All right. Well, today we're going to be animating this character here.
We're going to cube in.
Let's cube in. All right. So we're in After Effects, and we're going to animate this character. So he's a little, planet guy, being a bit zen and meditating, something, very tranquil. And we're mainly going to focus on some of the effects. So we've got mainly these sort of glows around the planets and around this little moon here, and they're animating nicely. And I think that's kind of the hero of this piece. So we're going to talk through setting up those, how to do that a few different ways, what things to avoid, and how to get the best result, and hopefully cover a bit of the other animated properties as well. And hopefully we get time to do a lot of this. But if not, at the end, I'm going to open up the working file for this, and you can ask any other additional questions about the stars or some of these wave warps in the middle. But yeah, we're going to cover the glows and the reflections.
Amazing. All right, let's get stuck into it. It's your show.
Excellent. All right, let's go. First, I'll show you a bit of how I designed this, because I do think that probably design is certainly the most important step in animation, the design and the planning, because that's really going to influence sort of how good the animation is. Often when you see an animation that you think, oh, that's really good. Why is it so good? It's because the design is so good. And not that I'm saying that, my designs are so good, but that's normally the most determining factor in whether an animation is good, is whether it's planned out and designed nicely. So I started designing this in Illustrator. Let's open up Illustrator. And this is the final file I outputted out of Illustrator. All of the shading and the gradients I did in Photoshop. And I'll show you a bit how I did that. But this is in Illustrator. Actually, this is in Photoshop. I'm sorry, we've gone completely the opposite way because they look identical. This is what comes out in Illustrator. This is just some vector shapes. I'll toggle the wireframe view so you can see what's in there. And I've separated these all into layers. And it's not as intuitive as you might think to get an Illustrator file into Photoshop. So I'm going to show you quickly how to do that. So you go up to File, and it's not in Save As or anywhere. You have to go to Export and Export As, which doesn't really give you any indication that it could be a PSD, but it is. So if you go into here, it brings up your window, and the default Save As type is Photoshop PSD. There's a bunch of other ones I've never heard of. I'm sure an enhanced meta file of your Illustrator file is convenient for someone, but I've never had to touch that.
There's one person out there using that.
Yeah, and then you save as PSD, and I want to make sure I click Use Artboards, and that's so your working area, your workspace is the same dimensions in Illustrator as Photoshop. If this isn't ticked, if you have stuff outside of your artboard, I always do when I'm in Illustrator before I tidy it up. I've got hundreds of different versions of different colors of different designs on the outside. It'll import to Photoshop as an 8,000 pixel wide composition, and then you'll have to resize in Photoshop. So to avoid all of that, I'm going to select use artboards, and then we can click export, and then we get one more window that comes up. Color mode, we want to stick with RGB because CMYK won't convert that well into After Effects. After Effects sometimes just flat out refuses to open a CMYK file. And resolution, if you want it to stay the same size, we go to 72 ppi, but because it's a vector file, you can export it as high res as possible, as high res as you want, but then you get a 4K file in Photoshop, and then that's just a huge ordeal to deal with in After Effects when you're animating. And then we want to choose right layers rather than flat image. If it's flat image, it'll just come in as if it's a PSD with one layer. With right layers, we get all of these layers up here, all separated, and a lot of them will even come in as Photoshop folders, unless they're grouped. And you want to choose maximum editability as well, so you've got more options. And then you select OK. I'm going to click cancel though, because I've already got this file open in Photoshop. And I'm just going to show you quickly how I did the coloring on the head, because if we look into After Effects, there's not really any animation on the head except for this glow on the outside. So all of the lighting is done static in Photoshop. So what have we got here? We've got this sort of dark shadow on the bottom left, and then a bit of sort of rim lighting of the yellow here. So let's, in Photoshop, we've got a head layer over here. And then I'm going to create a new folder and rename that, let's call it head, because we always label our layers. Chuck the head in there, and I'm going to color this in using some clipping masks. So first I'm going to select a brush, a nice big soft round brush, and I'm going to increase the size just using my square bracket keys, and I've got my key logger on so you can see what keys I'm pressing over here on the left. I create a new layer on top of the head layer and hold Alt and then click when I see this hovering arrow pointing downwards. So now anything I draw on this layer will only affect the head below it. So how I go in and shade these up is, let's get nice and close. And normally I do this on a tablet. I have a Wacom Cintiq that has a nice screen, but I'm just going to do this with a mouse here, because you can really do this with a mouse. It's just a little bit easier with a pen. And get a nice soft edge on this brush and just go through and just kind of cover the bottom left edge as if we're getting a light source from the top right.
Are you just using a standard brush, or do you have downloaded brushes that you use?
This is just a standard brush, right? And first in the general brush. I've got a few other brushes, but all I need is a gradient. So that's really all I'm using this for. And one thing I don't want it to do is cover up this little indent here in the head. Now, I should have probably avoided this by separating that layer in Illustrator, but it's too late for that now. Apologies. If you can hear sirens as well in the background, the layer police are coming for you.
Behind you.
That's really close. They're coming. All right. So okay. I didn't explain what I was doing. We're in the head layer. I'm going to select the Magic Wand tool and just select this yellow area. And I'm going to expand the pixels because now I'll expand them. I'm going to show you why. So I'm going to go select and where is select? Selection. All right. I have a shortcut for that, and that's Control Shift E, and then expand selection. I don't know where it is in the toolbar.
Is what happens when you do something and you use the shortcut so often that you don't actually know where it is because you're just doing it second nature.
So I want to expand it by 1 pixel. If I expand it by 5, you can see what it's doing. It's just making this selection wider. And I'm expanding it because sometimes when you make a selection, it doesn't quite, get all of the exact pixels on the outside. You can see, if we zoom in real close, there's some of these pixels down here that I kind of want selected as well. So I just expand selection and just choose 1. It just makes it one thing a little bit bigger. So I'm going to duplicate that layer with Control J and just drag that on top of that layer here. So now if we reapply our clipping mask, we've got this layer at the top still visible. And I probably expanded a bit too much because I've got these little red edges at the end. So so what I can do now is just select that layer, which selects the yellow, and duplicate that, and then delete the old one. So now that looks pretty much like we want. Then I'm going to create a new layer and make that a clipping mask above our head. Select our brush again, or B, which is the shortcut, and I'm going to Alt click, which brings up the eyedropper tool, or you can grab that from somewhere over here on the left. It's behind one of these. But Alt is a shortcut for that. Select the yellow, because I think we've got some yellow lighting down here on the left. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller and then just sort of fill in the bottom here. One thing I want to do is as well add some more red. So I'm going to add another adjustment layer, another clipping mask here. So we've got 3, we've got 1 for black, and then we're going to add 1 for red, and I'm going to come in on this side a little bit. And this just helps make it look like more of a spherical form. And then on the yellow layer, add a bit of that sort of rim lighting. And there might be a bit too much, so I can select the eraser tool, and I think my eraser is a hard brush, so let's go for a soft brush and just creep in there. And I can erase a bit of the black layer as well, because I think that might be a bit too much. But you can see with just a few little layers and a soft brush, you can get a nice spherical look here. And I'm going to add some shading to this little crack in the head as well with another adjustment layer, some red, and just put that at the edge. And I think I'm going to go into our black layer as well and add a bit of shading under the eyes. Actually, let's do that on another layer. And I'm just going to click on each eye. Oops, I've got red selected. I need to go and select black, or our sort of very dark purple that we've got here. And I'm just going to click a few times around the eye.
Planet is looking beat up.
It is looking very beat up. We're going to get rid of the ones at the top. This is just to add a bit of depth so the eyes look like they're popping out a bit. It does look, it could be some mascara running.
Right.
And let's grab our eraser tool and then just delete the top bits here. And we've got just a little bit of shadow underneath. That probably still looks a bit like it. He hasn't had a good night's sleep. So I can just nudge that up with our arrow keys and it should hide it a little bit. There we are. If we zoom out, we've got, a nice shaded planet. And I just did that for all of the elements here. I'm really into just adding lots of gradients at the moment to add form. That's what I go back and forth between, really flat design where everything's, just one flat solid, and then just wanting to add as much gradients as possible.
Often when I think of your work, I think of lots of animation, lots of texture.
Yes, definitely. So in this one, I don't think we've got much texture. We've got a little bit over the top in After Effects, but essentially I did that in Photoshop to all of these sections and then just imported that PSD into After Effects. So let's go back into After Effects, and I'll show what that looks like. Oops, whoa, didn't mean to click on that. All right, here we go.
Saying the planet looks like it's going to murder me, and I think we might be having the same vibes. It's looking through.
Oh, really?
Looking through the soul.
No, it's a happy little planet.
It's happy there.
It's happy. Yeah. What makes this one so?
I don't know what it is.
So fierce.
But yeah,
all right.
I'm with you.
Let's get into. He knows if you're labeling your layers. That's why.
All right.
All right. Okay, so we're in After Effects, and we've imported it from Photoshop. I've gone ahead and color coded all of these layers because it's just easier to see at a glance in your timeline. I've got all of my planets or the red layers, so I can just see by looking, where they all are. Now, the first thing that I want to do is animate this little guy, this little moon orbiting the head here. So let's go to the very beginning and animate its position. So we want its position to go sort of do a little circle around the head. Now at the moment, it's behind the head, and I'll show you how to get it really easily to go in front and behind. But at the moment, we're going to ignore sort of where it is in the layer stack and just assume and just sort of animate its path. So let's go into position, keyframe its position at the first frame here. And then let's go to 2 seconds in. We might make this slower, we might make it faster later, but it doesn't really matter as long as the keyframes are in the right order. So we're going to go over to the left, and then 4 seconds later, we want it to come back to the start. So if we play it now, it's just going to the left and then the right. Now I want to add a bit more of sort of a arcing path, similar to the ring of the planet here, so we can see it's on a different plane of perspective. So I'm going to go up to our pen tool and select Convert Vertex tool, which is very similar to the one in Illustrator. And I'm just going to hover over these sort of points. Which these points represent our position keyframes. And I'm going to drag this one down and then drag this one up. Nope, I want to drag that one down as well. And I just want to make a similar oval shape to the one we've got here. So maybe that's a bit too tall. Maybe we want to flatten that out a touch. Oops. So now when it goes around, it's going to go in a bit of an arcing path.
Cool.
And we also want it to slow down a bit at the start and at the edge here. And we want it to slow down because it's, even though this little moon here will be traveling at the same distance, it's coming forward in these points more than it is at these points. So it should look slower. So we can really easily do that by just adding an easy ease by selecting all these keyframes and pressing F9. And now if we play it, I think the easy ease should be fine. It kind of slows down at the edge here. And also, we need this to loop. So to make a looping animation, to loop your keyframes, the process is we need to add an expression. So we need to alt-click the stopwatch down here on our position property. That brings up the expression window. I know it's very frightening to type in expressions because it's all coding and that. But in the latest update of After Effects, I think from 2019 onwards, they have all this auto suggestion and it's all color coded down here. So it's very, very easy. So if I just start typing in loop, it gives me all the possible options that I could want for loop. We want loop out, so enter, and then the type of loop out we want is cycle. So I'm going to just type in our inverted brackets, our quotation marks, and then toggle down to cycle. It really limits, so it kind of limits the amount of wrong things you can type in by just offering you all the suggestions. So now we've got a loop out cycle. So that means at the end of this loop here, when we hit the last keyframe, it's going to start right back from the beginning. So let's see how that looks. There we go, right back at the start.
Very cool.
And we can go in and adjust these keyframes, maybe in our graph editor. Let's look at the speed graph. And I maybe want to take these bottom ones and drag them up a bit. Wait, let's do that. And that just means that it won't come to a sudden stop when it reaches the end here. So now it has it continues moving at this edge here. Whereas if I had them right down here, it's kind of subtle, but you can see it sort of park itself,
right,
and then pick up its momentum. So we just want to move these up a touch. And that's all we have to do in the graph editor. Now we need to bring this moon in front of our planet. So I think I want it to go behind the planet first and then come in front of the planet. So it's moving counterclockwise. So a really easy way to do that is actually, we want this planet to move. Do we want this to move a bit slower? Let's do it a bit slower. So I'm going to move this last keyframe. No, faster. Let's do it faster. That way, because if I make it slower, it won't loop. And we want it to loop. So let's put the last keyframe at 3 seconds and the middle keyframe at 1 second and 12 frames. That's my autosave. And there we are. We've got a bit of a faster rotation. So now we want it, when it comes here, to go in front. So a really easy way to do that is to just split your layer. So the shortcut for that is Control-Shift-D. So that makes a duplicate of that layer and just cuts it where your playhead is. And then I'm going to drag this second moon layer and put it above the head. So we've got in our layer stack, we've got our moon at the bottom, then our head, and then the second moon. So it'll go behind the head and then in front of the head.
Cool.
And we do need to do that a few times because of it looping. So I'm going to split it again here, drag this one down below the head, and then split it again over here. We've got moon behind, moon in front, moon behind, and then moon in front again.
Nice.
There we are. All right. And what I also want to do is add some glow to this little moon. So there are a few ways you can do glows. These ones are my static design, sort of these blue ones behind the planets. I did these sort of static in Photoshop, but I want these animated. And I'm going to show you two ways to do sort of an animated glow. The first one, we're going to do a sort of a flickering glow behind this moon. So let's get rid of that layer that we don't need at the bottom. And we've just got this moon in a pre-comp. And I'm going to duplicate it with Control D. And on the bottom one, I'm going to add the glow effect. And we can just find that in our effects and presets. And that adds a glow behind your object. Now, I want to now the default glow is, it looks kind of all right at the moment. It looks like a decent enough glow. And we can just make that bigger like this by increasing the glow radius. And we can change the glow threshold as well to determine what area it's going to glow in, to determine, sort of how much of our object it's going to glow really. Like if it's really down, the threshold's low, it'll only glow the sort of highlight areas, which are yellow. And then if the threshold's high, it'll glow the red ones as well. I can't remember what the default was. So let's reset that 60%. And let's just increase the glow radius to maybe 50. That's too much. 5. And I'm going to show you how to get a much better looking glow than this. So I'm going to take these two layers, move those to the left, and then duplicate them, and then move these ones to the right. So we can do two different versions of our glows. And I'll just color code them so we can see the difference down here. And also what I want to do is add a fill effect as well. So if I just type in fill, it's just going to color our glow, one color, because I don't really need it to have two different colors. And should we color this yellow? Yeah, I drop a yellow color, and I'm going to copy and paste that effect from this other glow as well. So on the left, we've got a default glow, and on the right, I'm going to show you how to sort of stack your glows to make it look more realistic. So what that involves is adding your first glow. Let's reset that. And we want our first glow to be really sort of tight to the edge of this object here. So we want our glow radius to be low. We can go, maybe 4 pixels, and maybe increase the intensity a bit. Yeah, that's fine. Actually, let's just take that back to 1. I can't really see a difference here. And then duplicate that glow again.
It's a subtle difference for sure.
It is. And then we're going to duplicate this glow again and keep adding more glows. And on our next one, we want to change the radius to make the radius a bit further. Let's go to 8 pixels. And the intensity down, let's try 0.5. There's no difference there at all. But yeah, the radius at 8 pixels, we can see it going out a bit further. What can we change to make that a bit more subtle? Actually, I think that might be fine. And then let's do a third glow, and then change the radius to be even wider. And you can see how this is different from this one on the left. There's much more of a more drastic fall off. See, at the very middle, we've got a very high intense glow, and then a medium glow, and then a much softer one. Whereas when we're just using one glow effect, all we can control really is sort of how big the glow is, how sort of wide the glow is. We can't really control the brightness at the center and the brightness, further away. And you can use the same technique with shadows. This is really good for making a more realistic drop shadow that sort of mimics light more naturally. So there we are. Let's get rid of these bottom 2 layers of our moon. Oops, let's delete those and drag this moon over to our center. I'm going to put on my title action safe grid, which gives us this crosshair, so I can kind of line it up a bit better. Let's nudge that to the left. And let's add a little bit of animation to this glow, and we're going to do that by adding a little bit of a flicker. So to add a flicker, we're just going to adjust its transparency. And really, I'm just going to keyframe this sort of up and down random motion. So let's set it back to 100. And we're going to add the wiggle expression, which you can apply by alt-clicking the stopwatch and typing in wiggle. And then you want to type in 2 numbers. You want to type in the frequency, then the amplitude. The frequency is how many times a second you want it to flicker. Let's say 6 times a second. And the amplitude is how much of the property you want to change. So we want a maximum of maybe 40% opacity. So we're going to say wiggle 6 times a second at 40% opacity. So now if we play it back, we can see it's changing, and it's changing by 40% every 6 pixels. And we get a bit of a flicker. I kind of want it to flicker a bit more though. So let's go to 12, not 112, 12 times a second. Get a bit more of that. And maybe what I want to do is just turn down the base opacity. There we are, get a bit more variation there. And let's turn the flicker down from 40% to 20%. Maybe that's even a bit too much, maybe 10. Yeah, I think that's looking all right. And now we've got our little sort of glowing moon. And now if we navigate back into our main comp, which you can do just by clicking these tabs here, or if you hold tab on your keyboard, it brings up this little mini flowchart. I'll do that over here so it's a bit clearer. So we can see that the moon, this comp is in the planet main comp. So we can click on that and then we get back here on the edge. And now we've got our little moon flickering, and the flickering is really subtle here because it's in motion. So maybe we didn't even need to add that.
There's a lot of fine detail tuning there. How do you ever catch yourself spending too long? I'm not saying you spent too long then, but I'm just saying, do you ever catch yourself like really getting into the weeds and thinking no one's going to notice the difference between this? It's just me.
Yes, absolutely. Right. But sometimes it's those kind of details that if you don't do it, you're going to regret it. The rest of your life, whenever you see, like, I should have added that. It would have just made a difference.
Right.
But normally not. Normally, what I do is, I'd add these glows and effects afterwards. And normally, I like to structure my process. So at the beginning, you're just blocking in the main animations, doing the big obvious movements, and then you slowly add in more and more essential details. So if you run out of time, you're not stuck, with a key element missing. You're just missing the little details of the glow on this planet and that type of thing. Cool. So that's, how we do our little glow. And because we've got our layer splitting up, like we split up our layer so it goes behind, our glow will kind of illuminate our character from the front as well. So we have the glow in the front, and then as it goes behind, it's not illuminating. So we get this nice clean edge. And there we are. So let's turn that sort of stacking of our glows principle into a more animated glowy effect of the atmosphere of these planets.
And just before we do, is now a good time to take a couple of questions?
Let's take a couple of questions. That'd be great.
We're going to transition using your show reel.
Excellent.
Let's do this. I just love that show reel, and I really wanted an opportunity to use it. It's so cool.
Thank you very much. You might recognize that. That's what I use as my intro to my YouTube tutorials, if you've watched those before. Yeah, thank you very much. But yeah, any questions? I see questions in the chat. Someone's asking, are the questions supposed to be specific to this animation? Or it's Zach. I recognize Zach from Instagram. You can ask me any question, really.
I have a question from earlier.
Yes, you've got some prepared. Hit me with those.
A couple prepared. So how do you choose which item or element you animate first?
Oh, really? The most important one first. The ones that are going to drive the animation. So probably if I was doing this not in a stream, let's go back to our main
You want to jump back
example. Oh, no. Oh, yes. Yeah, let's jump in.
Cool.
So that's our texture. Where is... Okay, so here's our finished one. So if I wasn't, just doing this in a stream, the probably most important... Here, everything's kind of equal in the hierarchy. Like there's nothing that if that was missing, that would be crucial. But maybe the position of the animation here. But normally, the most important element. So if it was, a character walking onto screen, I'd animate the legs and the body moving. I wouldn't worry about the hair, wouldn't worry about the background. I would animate what's going to make it easiest for me to animate later on. And normally that's the big primary objects because the other animations are kind of reacting to that anyway. So that's kind of how I plan it. And then that's also good from a production point of view. So you can show it to the client and if they say, wrong, we hate it, you don't have to go back and fix all the stuff. And
That's cool. I'll also give you bonus points for saying that's how we plan it.
And that, Flynn, that's...
You're amazing. I have another question. How do you adapt? How do you adapt to a certain style that a client wants? Like, how do you determine before you dive in?
Before the design phase, normally what's done is you get their input. You ask them, hey, what do you want this to look like? And normally they might have some... If they've got references, great. Because sometimes they have they might have a very specific idea of what they want, and they don't tell you, or they can't really find a way to express it. And I'm like, that's completely understandable. Sometimes when I've, you work with people, or you have an idea in your head, and you're like, and you might be really stuck to that idea, but unless you tell them, the other people, that you're really keen on this idea, they don't know that. So to try to, you need to extract what the client wants out of them. So normally the best way to do that, ask them for reference. If they send you a reference, you put together a mood board, or if they don't send you a reference, you put together a mood board and show some examples saying, hey, for your budget and for this type of project, we think this style would be really good. Here are some examples. Does this vibe and, look, suit what you're after? And then, you take a couple of hours to prepare that. And if they say, no, we don't like it, that's great. You haven't spent hours designing anything, and you want to sort of filter out what they don't like and then what they do like, and just get on the same page. You want to align yourselves with what both of your ideas of the project is going to look like. And then once you do that, then you design a bunch of things similar to your mood board, like in a similar style. And it's just a process of, I suppose, slowly figuring out what your client cares about and what they don't. They might just hate having strokes on the outside of your shapes. And that's a relatively easy constraint to do. You just don't animate with strokes. But that kind of might be really hard for the client to communicate. If they don't work in animation, they might say, no lines, we hate lines. And then I think, well, what exactly does that mean? Do you not want things to be straight? You want things to be curvy? And you just got to find out how to, interpret what the client wants. And the best way to do that is visually. Just say, hey, is this what you like? Is this not what you like? And just try to figure that out and not get too sort of upset when they don't like stuff, and just, figure it out from there, and hopefully get these things signed off, so that when you start animating and they think, I don't actually like this anymore, you can say, well, you said in this early stage you liked it like this, and this is we're fulfilling what you said. There'll always be changes, and be prepared that you're probably going to have to do them because they're the ones paying you. But as long as you've got sort of an understanding in place to say, hey, we did agree on this and you've changed your mind, that's okay. Maybe they thought that would look good when they were static, but they don't in motion. And also another top tip to avoid needlessly, just endlessly correcting things that the client thinks about. If they say, say they're critiquing this, they're like, I don't really like the planets, just change their shape. We could go back and forth on that for days and days and days. And they might not think that's a big job to do, but for me to change the shape of the planet, I'm going to have to go into Illustrator, then go into Photoshop, then go back into After Effects. That's, rebuilding from the ground up. Whereas changing the color of the ring of the planet is easy. I can do that in After Effects in a couple of clicks. But the best way to communicate that to the client is to tell them how much it's going to cost and say, all right, we can do that, but that'll probably take me about 8 hours, and either set the project back a day or two, or once that needs to be approved and worked on again, so we can apply that to the other planets, or say, hey, normally any client feedback you should start with yes, and yes, we can do that, and it's going to cost you an extra 2 days of work. And then they will quickly realize their ideas aren't that important when they're going to have to go up to their manager and ask for more budget because they want a ring to be a different color.
You're also capable of saying, this client literally wants me to change the world, which is pretty cool. One more question, then we'll get back into it. There are a lot of questions, so I'm sorry we won't have time to get through all of them. But Zach was asking, I'm sure you still do a lot of freelance work, but how was the transition from doing mainly freelance to balancing freelance along with being an educator? Because you're doing a lot of teaching, a lot of online teaching at the moment.
Yes, so that's probably what I'm doing mainly now. So last year was when I first started doing tutorials. It's pretty much just over a year. It was March last year, March 6th, I released my first YouTube tutorial. So in that 12 months, it's gone from being, 0% of my time to probably 90% of my time now. So pretty much last year I spent 50-50. So I freelanced for 6 months, not all at once, like in month chunks and lengths of different bookings of different lengths throughout the year. So I do essentially, like a fly in, fly out. I do 2 weeks at a studio, then come home and make tutorials for the next 4 weeks, so that when I went back into a studio, I had, tutorials already lined up. And I've just slowly tried to, decrease the amount of bookings that I take with the amount of sort of what I could justify being paid from the education stuff from YouTube and things like that. So it's just a slow, gradual path. And now I think I'm just about at the stage where only the education is covering all of my costs. So I don't really need to take any freelance jobs unless I need to, or unless the money the money goes too low, then I'll jump back into a freelance project.
It's good, a good time in history to be very adaptive with the way that we're working. So let's jump back in. There have been a lot of questions, guys. We're only here for an hour today, but we are back tomorrow and the day after as well. So we might extend one of those streams, Ben. What do you think? And we'll really try to focus on some of those questions.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm happy to stream as long as you need me to. And we are here tomorrow and Friday, and those ones are certainly they might be a bit more looser cool. With what we're learning. So yeah, that's a great opportunity for more questions.
Awesome, and thank you all for the questions. There's some great questions in here I'd love to dig into, so we'll make some time for that. Promise.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, let's go in and do these animated glows on either side of the planets. So I've done all of my glows on this one Photoshop layer at the bottom. So I'm just going to hide that because we're going to rebuild all of these. And let's go into our main body, this planet here. So I'm going to go into our planet here, and I'm going to create a new layer and create a new solid. And I'm going to do that with Control Y, and I'm going to color this kind of a purple color. I'm not being too exact here because it's not really going to matter in the end. And I can always change that, and I'm going to put that below our body. Now we can see our clipping masks in Photoshop are kind of more visible than we want them to be here.
Right.
They are not just being obscured by this planet body. And those are these two layers here. So an easy way to get around that, just duplicate the body 2 times, put it over these layers, select those layers, and then choose from track matte, choose alpha matte. So now they, like a clipping mask does in Photoshop, they're only going to be visible on our planet layer. And now we've got our purple layer to make our glow. So this time we're going to get our ellipse tool and drag that around our planet. I'm going to hold Shift so it creates a perfect circle, and just kind of align that probably around the edge of our planet, and I might shrink that a touch. And then I'm going to create a gradient by feathering this mask. So you can find feather by scrolling down here, by unfurling this menu here, or just by pressing F on your keyboard. We'll bring up mask feather, and then we just increase that, and we get a nice little sort of gradient around our planet. And now we want this to animate as if there's some, stuff in the atmosphere, some more heat or something that's creating a bit of disturbance. So let's add the effect turbulent displace. And that adds, already we can see a little bit of warping. If we flick that on and off, we can see that it's just sort of smudged our gradient a bit all over the place. And we want to animate that. So let's go down to evolution options. Actually, no, we don't need to do that. We need to keyframe that evolution here at the start of this comp. And then at the end of the comp, let's make that probably 1 rotation, 1 full cycle. So now if we play it back, we can see that's animating pretty slowly. We can barely see that at all. Let's go up to 6 evolutions. That might be too fast. All right, there we are. We can see it's animating probably a bit too fast. So instead of 6, let's get down to 3. And then if we scroll down to evolution options, we can choose cycle evolution. So that means it will loop. So when we get to the end here, it'll loop back seamlessly at the start. So now we have an animated glow, but I don't quite like how far the glow is moving. So we see at this point, we've got barely any atmosphere on our Earth here at the left. So if we decrease our size and decrease our amount a bit, it's going to slowly get back to 0. So if we set these to 0, it's not distorting at all. If we just increase these up, we're going to get more distortion. So if we keep the amount pretty low, then we get a bit more of it sticking to the planet. That's probably too much. Let's increase it a bit. There we are. And now to create a more realistic glow effect, like we did previously with our little orbiting moon, we can duplicate this layer with Control D. And actually, we should rename these layers. Let's rename these glow, otherwise I'm not going to hear the end of it. And on this glow, we want a much tighter glow. So we're going to go into our feather animation, sorry, our feather property, and let's take this from 144 down to 70 maybe. And let's also change the color so we can see it a little easier. Let's add a fill effect. And that red's not too bad. Let's go to a more sort of sky blue. And we also want to maybe shrink this circle of the mask close to the edge. Let's see how low we can get our feather. That's looking not too bad. And of course, we want it to warp in a bit of a different way than this turbulent displace. So we can just go in and just change the random seed to another number. And now they're kind of now they will warp in a different way. So we can get more of an overlap here.
Where do you usually get your colors from? Do you just eyeball it and pick it? Or do you ever use a color palette or anything like that?
Yeah, I sometimes eyeball it. Here I'm just eyeballing it because they're not going to be, like, it's not going to matter too much. It's just going to end up being sort of a bit of a bluey, purpley haze around here. Right. For the red and the yellow, what did I do in Illustrator? I think I set up a more complete color palette and then just decided to go back to these two colors. And sometimes I do that by using not apps, but there's a site called Chroma Color, and it's Chroma spelled Chroma color, I believe. And it uses like an AI to generate colors that work well together. And sometimes it works pretty well, but on their Instagram, they have a curated version, which has some really good examples of color palettes. So often I'll just go on there, use that as a base, and then maybe select 2 or 3 of the colors and maybe add another color in, depending on what I need. But often it's trial and error, depending on what's needed for the project. A lot of time it's just guessing and adjusting, and then finding out what works well. But yeah, it's hard to choose colors. So any help you can get is fine. Even if you eyedrop from an artwork or an illustration or a photograph, that's fine. I don't think there's color palette theft that people should be so angry about. If you're animating the same subject as someone and using their same colors, maybe then. But just take color. Like, no one owns the color combinations. It's fine. And normally you're gonna have to adjust them anyway, and then work from there.
Cool.
Okay, this glow, this is far too severe. We need to increase the feathering. And what else we need to do? It needs to be a lot tighter to our planet. So let's probably decrease this circle to something like that. And then we can add another one of these, duplicate this again, change the color. We might go a bit more of an intense green here. And let's push that a little bit bigger. And we're going to turn the feathering down. So it's really just hugging the edge of the earth. So you're barely going to see it, but it just looks like this nice sort of warm, glowy sort of, mess around it. And we've got to change the random seed on that one as well, so it doesn't match the blue. So this way I must have shifted our purple layer over a bit. That's why it went missing. There we are. So now we've got, all of our 3 sort of gradients all warping in different ways, all at the same speed, and they're just slightly, I suppose, sort of indicating there's some sort of atmosphere on this planet. And we maybe want to change this green, maybe to this yellow. Maybe that'll look kind of cool. No, that doesn't look good at all. That looks all muddy against these purple and blue. So when I'm doing gradients, I kind of tend to stick to colors that are similar on the color wheel, like green, blue, and purple, or purple, pink, red, or yellow, and pink, and those types of things, because you can really get into some weird areas. Let's duplicate this layer, and I'll show you. So if we have a green, especially like a neon green like this, feather that up, and then duplicate that, and then let's choose this sort of purple, we get this, not very nice looking sort of gray, brown sort of gradient no man's land. And sometimes that can look really cool. I kind of like that sort of anti-design kind of look you get, where there's just really sort of clashing like colors next to each other and you get these ugly gradients. But I don't think that's going to suit this, sort of tranquil vibe of this planet here. All right, let me save this file. How long have we got left on the stream? We got a little bit longer. Let's see what I've got.
Probably about 10 minutes, because we go off at 55. Yeah.
10 minutes. Well, let's cover doing the reflection. We can do that really quick. And of course, what I would do from here is I want to apply this glow to our other planets. So I would just copy these 3 glow layers and go into let's go into our head comp. I would paste them, and they're stuck behind here. So maybe what I would do is, like they're, downwards. So let's move them up behind our head, track them at the bottom of the layer stack, and then I should be able to just scale them down and move that over the top. We might need to adjust, how much they feather and those things, because when we scale them down, we're also scaling down the gradient. So, I mean, it works kind of well here because this, smaller planet might have a smaller atmosphere. But if we wanted it to have, to reach as far outwards into the depths of space, we might want to increase the feathering. But let's do the reflection. So let's collect, I'm just going to collect all of the layers that are above this sort of reflection pool, including our stars. I'm going to select them all down here. And I'm going to pre-compose those with Control-Shift-C. And let's just call this character. And now we've got all of that on one layer. So to get a reflection, we're going to duplicate that with Control-D. Now we have 2 copies of our layer. And I'm going to go up to Layer, Transform, and Flip Vertical. And that just flips it vertically. And then let's slide it down. And here, that's our reflection partway done. I'm going to change the blending mode from normal to screen, because the reflection can't really add darkness to anything. It can only add sort of light values.
Cool. And
I think that looks pretty good here. And then I'm also going to add another mask with our rectangle tool. Cover over the, select over the bottom area that we have here. And then I'm going to feather that as well. Actually, I need to invert that mask. So I'm going to click inverted. So now it's going to fade off where our mask is. And I kind of want it to fade away as it goes down, further down into the pool. And of course, because they're pre-composed, all our glowing animation will be duplicated. So any change we make into this comp will be replicated in the animation at the top and in the reflection. So the reflection is now kind of procedurally generated. So that makes it a lot easier if there's any changes or anything like that. And normally this might be one of the things I do at the very end. Or maybe I might, before I show the client, like it's pretty easy and quick to do, and just adds a bit more production value. And to get some ripples into this, in this water, we can add the effect wave warp. Wave warp. And we've got some ripples happening. Now they're rippling in the wrong direction and way faster than we want. So let's change the wave speed to 0.5. So that'll wave slower. And I'm going to change the direction, just point that upwards. Is that what I want? Yeah. And then we can adjust the wave width and height. So if you want it to be, really sort of narrow like this, you can have a wave width of really low and a height really high. I'm not sure how much I did in our original animation. Maybe something like this is kind of all right.
Cool. It's like a lava lamp.
Yeah, and what this does, it gives it a pretty exact sine wave in the wave warp. So there's no real, it's waving equally on all of the spots. If you wanted to do it with a bit more randomness, what you could do is you could add another wave warp, duplicate it, and then change the direction of this bottom one slightly. So there's a bit more variety, and then maybe alter the speed a bit. So there's a bit more chaos in there. Or you could add our turbulent displace effect from before. Turbulent displace. and set the displacement from turbulent to horizontal displacement. And then we just need to scale down the size, and we'll scale up the amount so you can see it a bit more obvious. And that is not animating, so we need to animate the evolution, so we can keyframe that at the beginning, like we did for our other turbulent displace, and then just increase that by, let's say, 5. That's all, maybe all we need to do. And then you can see you've got that's probably way too fast. You've got a bit more of a sort of random looking ripple here. And yeah,
that's super
so
cool.
that's how we can do reflection. But I think I prefer the wave warp, because our designs is so sort of symmetrical and geometric. It might look I think just this suits the vibe a little bit better. Maybe with some more tweaking of the width and height.
That's super cool. It's amazing how quickly you can add that, like something like that reflection adds so much to that image, like so much.
Absolutely,
depth. It's amazing.
Yeah, reflection adds heaps of production value. So if you want to, if you want to only animate half your animation, just put them on top of a pool or near a mirror, and then you can just flip them. And it fills up the whole screen, and the client's very happy because this looks cool. But yeah,
you can charge the client twice because you've done twice the amount of work, which is just incredible.
Exactly. Just send them a mirrored invoice.
Mirrored invoice. I love it. That invoice is two-sided. Very, 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 very good. We might sign off now. I think one thing that we've learned is that we need more time with you on Adobe Live, because there's been some great questions. So what we might do is we'll extend tomorrow out just a little bit longer to allow for some more in-depth Q&A. So for anybody out there, let's cue back in, Ben. For anybody out there, it's my animation skill. I press a button. For anyone that has asked a question, we'll endeavor to answer those questions tomorrow. It's same bat channel, same bat station. So it's 1 p.m. here in Australia and whatever time it is over there. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Ben.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Please come back tomorrow and Friday. I'll definitely want to answer more questions, more question time.
Yes, excellent. Awesome. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Great to see a lot of you. I hope everybody is doing well during these times. And thank you again. Bye.
Thank you very much.